Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar of the 2019 fall academic term. I just want to welcome all of you as we kick off the Fall 2019 Leadership in Action Lunch and Learn webinar series. Our series for the fall is the Power of Innovation, and there will be 3 webinars in this series, and I encourage all of you to attend and watch all 3. All 3 are available to be registered for in the e-learning center. Today, our panelists will be discussing our topic of Be Bold with Innovation, and we are lucky enough to have 2 Phi Sigma Pi members as panelists. First, we have Lynn Huang from the Gamma Beta chapter and Ben Johnson from the Beta Delta chapter. Before I do a more formal introduction on both of our panelists, I have a few logistics for you today. As you know, we are in our new core e-learning center and a new webinar platform. Polls will appear right on your screen on the slides throughout the webinar, and you will be able to click on the answers right on your screen to participate. If you have any questions during the webinar, you are able to type them into the chat box on the side of your screen. Please also use this chat box to answer any questions that Lynn or Ben may ask during the presentation. Now I would like to introduce our panelists for today. First, we have Lynn Huang. She was born and raised in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. She's a multidisciplinary designer and intersectional activist and has served as the student commencement speaker at Morehead State University's 2018 fall commencement. She graduated from the George M. Lucky Academic Honors Program with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Art and Design and a minor in Mathematics. At MSU, she has presented her advocacy research and productions in dozens of conferences. Poster on the Hill, the Appalachian State Conference, and the Southern Honors Council Region Conference. Currently, she is the programming coordinator at Clever Octopus, the first and only creative reuse center in the state of Utah, and an AmeriCorps Vista member. As one of the youngest speakers, she recently spoke at the TEDx Ogun with a talk titled The Art of Reuse, Rethinking Our Waste Through Creativity. She enjoys bringing studio and art elements into her design work, and she designs with a purpose and empathy. She is fond of carefully designed typographic posters, cozy coffee and boba shops, national parks, and art galleries. So welcome and thank you for being here today, Lynn. We also have Ben Johnson. He's a senior at North Carolina State University, studying computer science with concentration in game development. Video games have always been a passion of Ben's, and he enjoys creative and technical processes behind them. He is currently an auxiliary officer for the Video Game Development Club at NC State, as well as a programming intern for Amanji Studios, the makers of Temple Run. He is part of the Beta Delta chapter at Phi Sigma Pi since November 2017, and he currently serves on the executive board as a parliamentarian. Additionally, he is also passionate about everything pro-environmental and a scuba diver. And also I want to thank and welcome Ben for being here today as well. Before I turn it over to our panelists, I have a couple of poll questions to get us warmed up. So our first poll is, who is here with us today? You can answer the poll on your screen. Great, thank you for participating. Looks like we have a good variety of members here with us today, so welcome everybody for attending. I have another poll on our next slide. And this is this your first LIA Lunch and Learn webinar? Please answer. Yes, you're very excited to be here, or no, you are a Lunch and Learn pro. great. Thank you for responding. Looks like we have about 50-50 almost, a little bit more on the pro side. So welcome to all of those who is your very first. Oh, now we're at 50-50. So great. So welcome to everybody who is new. For this is your first Lunch and Learn, welcome. I'm very excited for you to be here and to be taking place and your first Lunch and Learn webinar. I hope you enjoy it. And for those of you who are Lunch and Learn pros, welcome back. I'm very excited for you to be participating in our new platform. And finally, I have one last poll before I turn it over to Lynn. This is to get us started with our topic. So how often do you use innovative thinking to solve problems or to reach a goal? This could be within your chapters, within your personal life, within your professional life. So we have rarely, every once in a while, fairly often, or all the time. Great, thank you so much for participating. If there's some people who still haven't clicked on the poll yet, feel free to, but it looks like we have a lot of people are using innovative thinking fairly often. So this is great. I think this will be a really great webinar for you to indulge in and to take some really great tips back to your chapters and to your professional and personal life. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn. She's going to get us started with our first portion of our webinar. So thank you, Lynn.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Lynn, and I graduated from Morehead State University, and I was part of 5 similar projects. I currently work as a program coordinator at a creative reuse center in Utah. So when I think about innovation, I think it's like a super broad and almost a little vague subject. So I want to divide it into 5 ways that I found it to be super helpful to be innovative and tackle the topic that way. So the first way that I think is super helpful to be innovative is to understand that success is not singular. And comparing yourself to others is typically not helpful. So in the chart or graph I have on the left, I think that's how I view success a lot of time. I think it's like a singular line and you start from somewhere and you get there. But in reality, it's always more complicated than that. And it's super easy to look around yourself and feel like everyone is more successful, quote unquote, than you. So next slide. I served as a student commencement speaker at my university when I graduated. And I copied a quote I said in my speech because I think it really is true to what I'm talking about here. So I said, it's important to recognize your own struggles, but the truth is struggles are not meant to be measured or compared. They're not meant to be explained. Today, as much as our accomplishments, because recognizing our sadness, loneliness, and stress takes courage too. So this kind of goes with the fact that everyone has their own path to success, and I talked about struggles a lot because I do think it's important to also recognize that and not just focus on success. To me, that really helps to see that success is not a singular line. And the next way that I found to be innovative is to learn to be comfortable with fear and accept failure. So I think fear is typically the reason I don't do a lot of things I tell myself I would. And with fear, I think it's a fear of failure. And a lot of times I don't think rejection is normalized, whether that be inside your chapter, in your academic career, or even beyond. I want to talk about recruitment with PSP because I think people always have a goal, and it's great to have a goal, but a lot of times um, you might not always get the turnout you want. For example, like if you're recruiting for PSP and you have a goal of 100 people coming to the recruitment event, and if you don't get that goal, I think it's okay. And that doesn't mean you should just completely ditch all your efforts and everything you're doing in marketing or whatever that is, because it's important to find your own way of success. And even if you don't reach the goal, like numerically, it doesn't mean that it wasn't successful, if that makes sense. And a lot of times you can only find your own success through trial and error. And I can definitely speak to that myself. A lot of things I do, like I just do it again and again until I find my own success through that. So that's the second tip I want to talk is to find your passion and follow that. So this one I really like because I think it's really important to have a passion. So I graduated with a BFA in art and a minor in math. So it's like a super almost conflicting combination. A lot of people ask me and they don't understand why I pick the majors and minors I ended up doing, but I wanted to study the things I loved and I didn't want anything else to get in the way. So it's really easy to like be changed by other people's opinion or like just exterior factor. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily put value on more humanity subjects. But I wanted to like study something that was a combination of both things I'm super interested and passionate about. So when thinking and talking about passion, um, the same. So imagine yourself in the room with white walls and you're doing what you're passionate about. So think of one thing you're super, super passionate about and imagine yourself in a room that's completely empty with white walls and you're sitting there doing what you're passionate about. Um, and when you're thinking about that, do you like, I think you can kind of gauge if you're actually passionate about that thing or if it's um, distraction, if that makes sense. So, for example, for me, it's art. So, creating and being creative. And that doesn't necessarily mean studio art, but we can use that as an example. So, if you put me in a room with white walls and I'm painting, I think I would still really love it because it's a way for me to express myself. And I'm just really passionate about painting in general. So I know that it's not because other factors like money, fame, and a lot of other things that we typically get about passion. And because of my passion in art, it also sparked my passion in sustainability, which is super cool because um, I I think I consider myself as like sustainable person for a long time, but it wasn't until recently that I like truly am like dedicated to the idea of sustainability. I currently serve as an AmeriCorps Vista member at a nonprofit in Salt Lake City that is dedicated to art education and environmental activism. So I didn't realize that I am so passionate about sustainability and all that stuff until I was standing on stage in front of hundreds of strangers talking about creative reuse at TEDx Ogden. So I gave the talk around a month ago or a month or two ago. And it was super scary because um, it was a lot of very and but it was a super great experience because I like really found what I love to talk about and I was able to have that platform to share my idea with everyone. Um, so along with that, I think once you find your passion, it's super easy to just start following that naturally, and then that will lead to other things you're passionate about, which is super great because that will help you be innovative. Um, and I also have to talk about that passion doesn't really have to be academic. I think a lot of times in college, even like in the beginning of a person's career, like that have to help you become a better student academically. And I can definitely like say that is true for myself. It's really hard for me to get out the mindset that not everything is about academic and school, but not I say that, but it's also important to find things you're passionate about that's not work or school related. So for me, in my intro, I talk about how I really like boba or bubble tea. So it's a Taiwanese specialized drink. That's in a lot of bigger cities in the US. So when I first moved to Utah, because I really just love boba and it's nothing to do with school, it's just like a personal thing that I love. I interviewed and got a job at a local boba shop because I just wanted to know everything about it. And currently, I manage the social media for the boba chain in Salt Lake, which is super neat because I get so that's kind of a combination of both academic and non-academic interests that spark my passion and allow me to be more innovative that way. The fourth way to be innovative is to understand that trying is often the hardest part. So when I applied to TEDx, I didn't think I would get it. I kind of just applied because why not? The application was available to me. A lot of people at my work encouraged me to apply, so I did. But if I didn't even do that, there is 0% chance of me being the speaker. So, as one of the youngest speakers at TEDx Ogden's history, um, it was definitely really scary, and I was also very afraid of trying because I know that like I am competing against other very qualified people. But I think once I understood that, and the rest got a lot easier once I got over my initial fear. Um, and that's one example of how trying is often the hardest part. Another example is with sustainability. Um, and with all the work I do at the Creative Reuse Center I work at, I think it's really difficult for a lot of people to think and rethink how we currently view waste. So a lot of people do think we're currently so deep into climate change that there's not really a lot of things we can do to help. But I do think like if everyone gets in the mindset that sustainability is important and placing sustainability first, that is when we actually start to get political and policy changes. Um, yeah, so that's the fourth way I think is important to be innovative. And the last and final way that I want to talk about is always be open-minded. So, um, so I think it's very important to learn from those who are different than you. So whatever that is to you that you might see different, like don't let that get in the way, if that makes sense. So after I graduated 6 months ago, it's been really hard to learn because I think like if you don't go to class, like it's a very different dynamic and it's definitely something that I'm still getting used to. I also currently work 3 jobs, so I don't have a lot of free time, but because even though I don't have a lot of free time, I still like want to and I still find ways to keep being curious because I think that's the number one thing in terms of being open-minded is to you have to be curious in learning and you have to understand that learning doesn't stop once you're out of school. So I think this is super applicable to a lot of people who are listening who's alone like that when I'm talking about the mindset of learning once you're outside of school. And even just PSP, like a lot of times, even when I was in undergrad, um, my part really helped me to like be open-minded and be curious. But I like always have to remind myself that it doesn't end there, and I always have to be more like creative in ways of how I learn things. So again, because I work so many jobs now, I use a lot of podcasts to be updated with what I'm interested in about. So I like listen to the daily news every day on podcast when I'm driving to work. And if there's anything I'm like interested in, like topic wise, for example, I really like design thinking. I'll like look up different podcasts and just like listen to them or I really do like interviews of certain people you're inspired by, and then because then you get to not necessarily like mimic how they live their life, but you get super inspired by that. I also travel a lot and I find time to do it despite being super busy, because honestly, at the end of the day, I think that really does help me to be inspired and help me stay curious, just to be exposed to different cultures and different languages and different mindset. So, and then I added an image that talks about how we should be open-minded and it's important to be that way. So that's my 5 ways that I think is that I broke down into how to be innovative. And obviously my experience, I just want to put that out there. So this is just my way, I think, that I remind myself a lot of times when I feel like I'm not being as innovative as I could. But I hope everyone learns something from my experience and what I believe are great 5 ways to be innovative. So now I'm going to turn the mic and attention to Ben, and he will be speaking about his experiences of being innovative.
All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Just to give a quick recap, my name is Ben. I'm a senior from Raleigh, North Carolina in computer science. And I'm going to be talking about, I guess, a more uncomfortable side of innovation, which is failure. You know, what to do if or when it happens and how to like plan for it properly. So next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to start off with a quick poll just to kind of get you in the mindset to respond with an idea or a project. Just like think about an idea or project that you've had in the past, and you know what were the things that hindered you. You can select multiple in this poll if multiple things apply to you.
Okay, it looks like we have some responses coming in. Give everyone a few more seconds to respond.
Okay, so it looks like we have a pretty good smattering just about everywhere. I love that we got a lot of responses though. The two big ones being did not have a reliable support group and you're running into unpredictable problems, which happens, you know, like life happens. Maybe you're planning something and then like the next week you get hit with, you know, like a crazy test or just about anything can happen. And you just like, you run out of, again, that motivation. Maybe something unpredictable happened and you didn't know how to deal with it. And I can relate to the support group thing. I think we're going to cover that in one of my upcoming slides, but we can go ahead and move to the next one. We've got, so just to give a little background as to why I'm here talking to you guys about innovation. This was my experience. So last year when I was a junior in computer science, I knew that my passion, so like what earlier on your passion, I knew that my passion was going to be like coding video games. And I realized on my current path, I probably was not going to get there. So I needed to change something. So I began in the summer before my junior year, I started teaching myself how to use popular like game engine softwares. And I set the following goals, which was joining my school's game dev club in the fall, developing an online portfolio, like creating my own personal website and hosting some of my projects there, networking with developers at the school's annual career fair, and then the long-term goal being starting the next summer with an internship at a UK company that I really had my eyes set on. So here I was down the right path. I set the first sort of like goals for myself, something to get me started. And that's why I included this slide here. I know it's kind of like, it takes a step away from failure for a second, but it's always worth reiterating the importance of setting goals for yourself when coming up with innovation, because I know I've definitely run into this situation, I'm sure you guys have too, where you come up with an idea And that's kind of it. You have the idea and you can picture the end goal in mind, but you don't really know how to get there. So it's always worth, reiterating that one of the best ways you can do that is just starting with some short-term goals, and as well as finding people who can help you achieve that goal. So like that support group that a lot of you said you feel like you didn't have. I know from my personal experience, a huge thing that I have that Lynn touched on earlier is like a fear of failure. And not so much that, but showing others that that I failed at something, that I wasn't able to achieve this. And so one of the things that I left in my previous slide was I didn't have a support group. I started out sort of doing this on my own. Later, when I got into the club, I did find a support group, and they were extremely helpful, and they definitely got me to where I was today. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. So probably two of the most important things you can do when you're planning is, again, setting some short-term, long-term goals, and then also taking the time to find people who can either be a important key component of your plan, or just being there to make sure that you're on track and supporting you when you need it. Next slide. So setbacks. I had my plan, I got started, and then probably within the first month, I was running into multiple steps. Wanting that making games requires art, and I am far from an artist. It is hard to find reliable, easy to use online tools or online art assets like plants or like character models. Those things aren't readily available, and that was something that definitely slowed me down because I was also having to learn how to be a 3D artist at the same time. Here was one that I was unable to predict, which was my school's career fair was going to have no game developer companies at it, which really surprised me because here in Raleigh, that is the headquarters of Epic Games, which is actually those are the creators of the widely popular Fortnite right now. So they were taking off last year. I thought for sure I was going to see them because they'd be trying to recruit more people, and got nothing out of that. So, and then the last one is more of a personal thing that, is embarrassing to admit, but admittedly, yes, while on the track of learning how to make games, I was also spending a lot of my time just playing them. Because like I said, I was teaching myself over the summer. I had a pretty laborious job at the same time. And sometimes at the end of the day, I just wanted to come home and I just wanted to relax. And I just wanted to play some games instead of dealing with all these struggles I was already dealing with in the process. So this represents a pretty good spread of the setbacks you can run into. The art one is an example of an unexpected thing. So this was something I didn't think about when I was planning, that there are a lot of things that go into video games. And the middle one, the career development, that is a great one where that was something totally unpredictable. That I was really relying on using that to sort of throw out some business cards, make some connections. And that was a huge part of my plan that was totally not going to happen. And then the last one is something I probably could have planned for, but I just wasn't thinking of it at the time. I hadn't learned at that point to predict setbacks at that point, and I wasn't accounting for, I guess, my own setbacks as a person. And then the next slide, I believe we talk about, yes, so how do you deal with these setbacks? So one of the great ways that you can deal with them is planning for them in advance. So it's a weird thing to think about because when you're in this mindset of innovation, you're always thinking about, this is what I'm going to get done, this is how I'm going to do it, and everything's going to go right. And if stuff doesn't go right, I don't know what I'm going to do. So, and that's why it's really important to plan for failure and plan for setbacks, not if they're going to happen, but when they're going to happen, because being planned for them in the first place, it really grounds you in reality. Maybe you realize, you look at your long-term plan and you realize maybe it's not as achievable as you thought before after you consider some of the setbacks that can happen. So maybe you set a more realistic goal, and you'll also learn how to maybe set certain deadlines that'll keep you on track, that'll allow you extra time for setbacks. And it overall not only prepares you for when those setbacks can happen by giving you a more realistic goal, but also giving you plans, giving you outs and ideas of what to do when those setbacks occur, so that you are ready to not get as discouraged so quickly, and instead find ways that you can move past those setbacks. And on the next slide, I have two great examples of what you can do when you encounter setbacks. So the first one is reevaluating your goals, of course. So maybe you're like me, you were a month into what you're trying to get done, like planning an event or just like trying to get better at like a core subject or something. And you begin to think that your original goal is not as attainable. So you can just sort of use this as like a checklist here. You can think about, was my goal from the beginning attainable with the plan of action I had to implement it? And as well, with the new information that you now have from that month of working on the project, is there something that you need to change now because new information has invalidated your previous goal? And this last one is a little tricky. It's, do I need to change my goals to be more attainable? And this is often seen as moving the goalpost. And this is something that I can attest because this is what I did in my situation. But it's all about really how you handle this, because moving the goalpost can definitely become like very, I guess, a slippery slope rather quickly. Like you can quickly set your goals lower and lower and lower until you're almost like not working at all to achieve them. And there are also many deadlines where you can't move the goalpost, like with sustainability and climate change. That's really a goalpost that we can't move as much as a population. But the important thing at the end is moving the goalpost means that you didn't give up. And maybe you won't receive as much satisfaction or like, self-satisfaction when you reach that lower goal, but we're still moving forward. You still are going to learn a lot more about yourself and as well as what you're trying to accomplish. And oftentimes you'll find that maybe what you moved down to was the more realistic goal in the first place. And it's what you should have planned for originally. Maybe you would have thought about it if you were thinking about these setbacks during the planning phase. And the other one, after you reevaluated all your goals, maybe you just need to reevaluate your plan of action. You know, what do you need to change about your like achieving those goals to actually reach them? And maybe this could be personal changes. This could also be, do you need to take another step back and look at your support group? You know, maybe you're at this point and you still don't have anyone helping you. And this is a great time when you need to increase your skill set by reaching out to friends, you know, people that have like the same goal as you, or just want to help you, and they can be there to help you find new ways to reach those goals. Next slide. This was another thing that I just wanted to include because this was what I ended up running into when I was reevaluating my goals. So instead of having that like long list of goals of things that I was still relatively unfamiliar with how to accomplish, I just set this very basic one, which is just being 1% better each day. I mean, there are a lot of like minutes in the day. We all have hopefully, you know, enough free time where we can find just enough time to get 1% better at whatever we're trying to accomplish. And so what this picture is trying to demonstrate is if you get 1% better at something over the course of a year, you'll have almost gotten 40% better at it. So that admittedly doesn't sound like a lot, but that's just, if you can use that as your baseline and instead be striving to get like 2% or 3% better at something every day, there is still more progress overall than if you were just to stop and just give up on something. So for the next slide, oh yeah, there's another poll here. So this is my end result. So after I ran into those setbacks, I set my new goal. This is what I end up with. So my expected was I was gonna have that full website of like personal games and tech demos. I was gonna meet all those cool people at the career fair and get to know them. And then I was gonna end up with that internship in the UK. And instead, what I ended up with was a much smaller portfolio with a couple games that I was able to put together. I made a lot of connections with alumni at the Game Development Club, which was something I didn't predict. I didn't expect the Game Development Club to be as big of a resource as it was. It turned out being an incredible group of people, and they became, the support group that got me to my goals. And I got my internship in Raleigh, which I didn't know about when I originally began this like down this path, but I overall I love where I ended up working. But this raises the question of, did I fail? And this is something that you'll reach when you reach either your expected or the goal that you end up with. And it's this question of like self-success. Like if you had told me that this is what I was going to end up with a year ago when this started, I would have been like, I mean, this is like cool and all, but I feel like I can do better. But this is still very much more than what I would have achieved if I had just letting those setbacks like stop me. If I had just given up and been like, oh, I could use this time to like put more into my classes and just, give up where I was at and let those setbacks get the better of me. And instead, like think that failure meant the end. So on the next slide, there we go. So again, it's what defines your success. And that's definitely something that you'll encounter on your own. And there's the first option, which is meeting your original planned goals. And this is what you're thinking about when you're initially planning. You're maybe not so much thinking about setbacks or what can like stop you. And this is what motivates you, I think, primarily. But then your other option is when you meet the goals that are similar to your original sort of, I guess, dream ones. And this is more or less often the realistic scenario, especially with innovation, because if you're particularly, like innovating with something that a lot of people haven't tried before, there are definitely unexpected like issues or again, like setbacks that you could run into that no one's really like prepared for. So when you, again, think about during the planning phase, what sort of setbacks and issues that you can run into, you come up with this more realistic scenario. And that's why a good skill when you're planning is being able to plan for not only personal setbacks, but just like unexpected ones, anything that can happen that will possibly hinder you and learning how to handle those. And it's all about primarily I get this on the next slide before I get ahead of myself. It's all about primarily rethinking how you look at the word of failure. So, especially like for me, I've been in school most of my life. And when I think of failure, I think of like failing grade or like failing to complete something, anything where it felt like the end. And the idea of failure is not something that you can have. You cannot associate yourself at all with failure if you want to be successful at something. But oftentimes, failure is less of when you run into like setbacks and it's more of when you decide to quit. So it's this difference essentially in failing and giving up. So oftentimes if you get like failure in something, you feel like that's your sign. That's when you need to give up. You need to put your efforts elsewhere. And instead, it's not so much that, but encountering these setbacks that initially feel like failure, but are really just signs of how you can improve and how you can change yourself or what you're trying to get done so that you can come up with a way that is actually achievable. So it's changing your plans is not a weakness, but it's a reality. Like no one is perfect. If you're like initially getting into this idea of like innovating, you're trying something you've never tried before, you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be able to predict everything when you're like trying to plan it out, or even if you're trying actively to set these realistic goals, you're probably still going to run into like at least some setbacks, and having to change, what you're doing or what you're trying to get done, like I did, should not be seen as weakness, because as long as you don't give up and you keep trying, you will still achieve some level of success, both for yourself and what others see in you. Next, thank you. And so primarily what I'm trying to, I guess, leave with you today is properly dealing with failure is one of the best skills that you can have. So not only is it a great skill to be able to come up with all these great ideas and being able to plan and set the goals and having that motivation to do something, that maybe no one's tried before. It's also very important that when you run into issues trying to complete that you can deal with that properly, and instead of giving up and just letting someone else try, that you keep trying until you reach that goal. So when you encounter setbacks, take what you've learned so far in however amount of time that you've been working on this project, make new plans or goals, and then just keep moving forward, never looking at what you need to change and instead just like giving up and saying it's not for you. Instead, just keep changing either your plans or your goals or both to a point where you can keep moving forward. And then in the end, maybe your level of success won't be the level that you originally wanted, but it still prepares you more for the next time you try something like that. You know, you're always taking steps forward and being, you know, being able to achieve greater things. And the last thing is always get others involved when you can, especially when you're taking on projects the size of like what I did. You know, look at your family, your friends, any close ones, definitely fellow members and alumni of Phi Sigma Pi. You know, we're a whole network of innovative, you know, constant learning and achieving people. And I'm sure that you definitely have some people that you were brothers or members with, either currently or in the past, if you're an alumni, that would be, you know, more than happy to help you achieve something.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to both Lynn and Ben for that amazing presentations. Does anybody have any questions for them to drop in the chat box that they could answer here before we wrap up the webinar today? I know I really learned from both of yours. I loved the portion about the passion, Lynn, about how, you know, really finding that passion of yours and really thinking about and how to think about it. I like the white wall, you know, room scenario. I think that's a great way to kind of really think about what you're passionate about and how you can use your passions to be innovative, to reach new goals and to reach new heights in your professional and personal life. And then also, Ben, I really loved, you know, just everything about how, you know, failing isn't really failing. It's just about, you know, fixing your goals and how you can make them more attainable. And okay, great. We have a question for Lynn. Sarah asks, what was your experience like preparing for your TEDx talk, and how did you use your experiences to help you? Lynn, did you hear that question for you? Right, I think we'll move on to Ben. There's a question for you. It said, "Hi Ben, how are you moving that goalpost and making your goals during your senior year now that you're about to make the big transition to being a graduate?" He said, "Congratulations, by the way, super proud."
Yeah, Deirdre's also an alumnus of Beta Delta, so I'm familiar with her.
Oh,
she was
awesome.
my fraternity. How am I moving that goalpost and making goals during my senior year? Well, so like I said, I was an internship at Imanji, and right now I am in that transition period from full-time to part-time. So this is my first time having a part-time job as well as balancing, I guess, all my school projects. So I guess I'm still in that period. I'm still feeling out, you know, how much can I commit myself to my job, as well as making sure that I do well enough in my classes that I can actually graduate on time. As far as moving that goalpost, I guess originally one of my goals was to work at a company that makes, you know, much larger, like well-known games. So like the one that I was talking about, that place in the UK, and as well as like Epic Games, they make games that people, you know, like millions and maybe like billions of players have tried. And now, like, as I'm working with the people that I work with at Imanji, I'm probably thinking about moving that goalpost to where I would be happy working full-time with them. And, you know, it changed because my original idea was, if I work on a game that I love playing, then that'll mean that I will be happy with my job. And so Temple Run, I still enjoy it, but not to the same level as some of like the other console or computer games that I enjoy playing. But the people that I've worked with, I now realize are most likely the more important part of finding that job satisfaction. And the people that I work with here at Imanji are some of the, like the greatest people I've ever met. So I think I would be happy if I didn't settle, but if I continued working with them instead.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any questions before we wrap up today?
Did we lose Lynn? Did she disconnect?
I'm not sure. It says she's still here, but I'm not sure. Oh, she's having an audio problem. Okay, thanks, Lynn. We just wanted to make sure you were okay and still with us. Okay, understandable. Okay, so I will then wrap up for today. So I really just want to thank everybody for attending, and thank you, especially to Lynn and Ben, for sharing with us all about how to be bold with innovation, how we can, think of those 5 ways to be innovative, how we can not be afraid of failing, quote unquote, but really, just making sure we're always being innovative and using how we learn from our mistakes and learn from, I want to say a quote unquote, a failed goal, how to just make that keep moving on and really working to solve our problems innovatively. And the one graphic that was on Ben's, I think I love that it said that really the word fail means your first attempt at learning. So I really enjoyed that. And I think that's a great takeaway as well. So if you have any follow-up questions, Lynn and Ben are going to put their emails into the chat box. So you can certainly email them with any questions that you may have. Moving forward, as you think of something about innovation or something about what they talked about, if you're looking to go into the fields that they are working in, certainly use, that network, how Ben was saying, use the network of Phi Sigma Pi to really get, involved and help with anything that they can help you with. And you'll be able to rewatch and share this webinar on the Core eLearning Center at learn.phisigmapi.org/p/beboldwebinar. So for those of you who are watching this recorded, thank you. And for those of you who are live, please be sure to share this out with your fellow members, alumni, co-workers, if you would like, if this is something that they would be interested in, or those who weren't able to join us this afternoon. So thank you again for participating today, and congratulations on earning your 8 leadership and action points. In order to claim your 8 points, you'll just need to complete the steps in the webinar course on the eLearning Center. So once we are done for today, just go back to the Be Bold webinar course, and you'll be able to finish those steps to claim your 8 points. And remember that your goal is to reach 75 points to earn your leadership and action certification. And you can earn more points by participating in leadership and action modules, lunch and learn webinars, and completing lunch and learn challenges, all 3 of those things are all on the eLearning Center. So please, as you're in the eLearning Center claiming your points today, poke around, take a look at what's all there, maybe register for the next upcoming webinars. And you can also register and watch the past lunch and learn webinars that we have held over the past 1.5 years. And as I mentioned, the Power of Innovation series is just getting started. We're just kicking off today. So we have 2 more coming up this term. So the next webinar will be on Monday, October 14th. And that is going to be on becoming an entrepreneur. We're really we're kind of building steps onto how for innovation. So this next one is going to be how to become an entrepreneur, those innovative steps of how you can do that to either create a product, create your own career, create your own business, how you can use that. And you can register for that module or that webinar, at learn.phisigmapi.org/p/entrepreneur webinar. If you're already in the eLearning Center, if you just click on Lunch and Learn Webinars and scroll down, you will see both of these there to register for. And then finally, the 3rd portion of our Power of Innovation webinar series will be on Thursday, November 14th. And that's going to be on creating a nonprofit organization. And we are happy to have a Hobie alum and volunteer be able to work with us on that one to bring in our partnership with Hobie. And you can register for that webinar at learn.phisigmapi.org/p/nonprofit webinar. So that does it for today's Leadership in Action Lunch and Learn webinar. Thank you all again for participating and for attending. I hope to see you next time. Lead on.